carry on then. Any apologies for absence? None to me.
No, I have no apologies for absence, Chair.
Okay, thank you. And any declarations of interest from members regarding anything that may be relevant in tonight's agenda?
No.
No declarations of interest, Clark. Thank you. The minutes of the previous meeting of the Town Council held on the 8th of March. It was read. Can I have a proposal, please?
I'll propose those, Stuart.
Councillor Toogood, seconder. Councillor Lucas, thank you very much indeed. Item number 4, the financial report of Clark.
Thank you, Chair. The last report of the financial year for the financial year now completed, and at the 31st of March, the Town Council's funds in total stood at 163,619, and both bank accounts were reconciled to that date. Payments during March, we paid out 46,072, of which 4,094 was from the Salisbury Gardens account. And I need to draw members' attention to a mistake on my part in the receipts section of this report, where 2 3s have crept in front of the receipts for the Salisbury Gardens account, which were actually 4,006, not £334,000. So apologies for that. It's actually because the pound sign is just above the 3. Total receipts during the month were 17,341. The usual list of payments and receipts against budget are attached. Somewhat strange year, of course, because of the amendments due to COVID restrictions. So payments in the budget period of the financial year were £45,382 less, and receipts were £8,239 under the budget. For that current year, Chair.
Could I have a proposer? Okay. Seconder?
I'll second it, Stuart.
Councillor Toogood. Thank you very much indeed. I know you referred briefly to receipt and payments part. Is there anything else you want to add to that?
On what, Chair?
Receipts and payments.
No, as you know, this is purely a factual summary of the year, and full income and expenditure accounts will follow, I hope, at the May meeting of the new council. But I have nothing to add. I can obviously answer questions if there are any.
Yeah. Any questions, Clark? Councillor Lucas.
Yes, I was a bit puzzled by the difference between the income and the expenditure on the car parks. They seem to be in a deficit. Is that a timing or what?
What on earth is going on?
On the car parks, there appeared to be less income than there was cost.
This is not a full year accounts, and there is income yet to be recorded in the cash.
Oh, I see.
Because
Okay.
it's late. it's really hard to make judgments on this version of the accounts. There are a lot of alterations to come, and you'll see those in May.
Okay, fair enough.
You're referring, Brian, to the 19 to 21 difference, I suppose. Yeah. Okay. Anything else on that?
Sorry, can I just interject a minute? Can we try and do something with the background noise? I'm really struggling to hear anything tonight with
Yeah.
the different background noise that's going on. Could I suggest that everybody who's not talking mutes, because it is really difficult to hear tonight? Yeah.
I can't hear anything, and now I've vanished. Right, let's start again. Morgan, Morgan
Is
there.
it with you, Stuart?
Well, I've
Sorry?
gone.
With your picture I've got it on show the person talking, and your picture keeps coming up when the noise happens, even when you're not talking.
Well, there's no noise here, and there's no I can see my own picture, but there's no noise here. I'm in the dining room on my Nat's putting a coat on to go out, but apart from that, but
It sounds like a shredder, like a shredder in the background.
Right,
No.
well, I've gone. Right, I'm going to have to start again because mine has completely disappeared. Can someone tell Morgan I'm going to have to drop out and start again? Right, because the noise is awful. Hold on.
Okay.
All right, go to meeting. Okay.
I say we'll give Dealey a minute to organise, and then we'll carry on with the insurance valuation.
No, it won't let me in. It's telling me you're already running, but I know that.
Well, Dealey, I can see you and I can hear you.
Oh, that's all right, isn't it? Because I can't.
Can everybody else hear Dealey and see her?
Yep. Yep.
No. All right,
Yeah,
well, that's all right.
everybody can see you and hear you, I think, Dealey.
How weird. Well, there's nothing on in my house except this. This is very odd. Start my free trial. I don't think so. Yeah, can you do that, please? Let's start again. Thank you. Sorry.
Well, whilst we're waiting for Delian to rejoin, I think I'll make the same comment that I guess I've made for the last 3 years about what a useful snapshot the receipts and payments sheet makes. Yeah, that's my stock comment every 12 months when this comes up.
I don't know what Dealey's problem was, but I had no trouble hearing her at all. So.
Oh, there I am. Don't know what that was about. I'm unmuted.
Okay, you're back, Dealey, and I can
Yeah.
hear you. I'm assuming everybody else can hear you as well.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, let's go now to the insurance valuations. Just a short paper here, and to the effect that we really need to have a look at the different assets that we've got and see whether the insurance obligations are going to be effectual or not. David Clark, sorry.
Yes, I think Councillor Toogood or Lucas might have more to say about this than I do, but
Chair, if I could come in first on this, and Brian can follow it up, please. I looked at all the valuations, and I in my opinion, there's 6 buildings which are grossly underinsured. So what I've done, I made a note of my comments to send to David and Brian, and with David's permission, I've written and had replies from 2 surveyors to give us a quotation for revaluation of these 6 particular buildings. I had one valuation, I think it's about 1,700, I'm not quite sure now, and I had one in today around 800 and something. But both these companies I deal with quite a bit. I've had a lot of experience with them. I trust both of them. But follow on from that, Brian, myself and David had an interesting meeting with the insurance agent today, which I really like Brian to take up, if you don't mind, please. Brian?
Of course, yes, we need this council to approve, don't we, the expenditure of these surveyors to do this reevaluation. But I will pass on to another interesting point, which was about the park. I asked the insurance guy what the arrangements were for public liability insurance of small groups who might want to have some small event at the park. And he said that everyone there needs to have public liability insurance, no matter what size they are. And I see that as a little bit of a problem. And you get a very small group in the town that might not be very formally organised. But he said that we as a council should not take on the liability for the things which they do unless we actually organise it ourselves. Well, we wouldn't want to do that. We wouldn't want to organise a car boot sale on behalf of a small group. So it does impose a responsibility on them to take out public liability insurance, either for that event or per year. So when we book these people, we need to make that point.
Chair, for me, the issue...
Brian, I think because I think that's part of the terms and conditions, Clark, isn't it, in any case, that people, individual groups or individuals themselves who want to hire the park do need to have public liability insurance as part of the deal.
Chair, if I may, the issue is set out in the recommendation, and as Councillor Toogood said, we've had a cheaper second quote than the one I've referred to in the recommendation of £850 that will give us a professional valuation of each of the assets listed in section 2B of the report. So the council has been asked to approve that non-budgeted expenditure in order to ensure that the assets we're responsible for have proper insurance cover.
Just remind me of what the 2 figures were, please.
The figure that's in question is £850.
And the other figure was, sorry?
1,350.
The one that's here. So so there's a £500 difference. Not knowing any of the parties concerned, I don't really have an opinion in this. I don't.
I could probably come in there, Chair. That I've dealt with both of them for many years, really. They're very trustworthy people, very clever people. That the 1,350 has a lot more overheads, but they have big offices in Newport, also one in Southampton, where the larger one just has one small office in Rye and one member of staff. That makes a big difference, it really does. Overhead, yes.
And Jim, sorry, Councillor Toogood, this is just merely to give us figures to base our insurance quotations on when we go to reinsure these assets. Is that correct?
Yeah, what we need to do, Chair, is that I'll go around, and if Brian's got time as well, we'll do it together. Go in with the particular surveyor and discuss each building as it goes. What they do then is revalue it as a complete rebuild.
Yeah, for myself, I think insurance is something we just can't afford to neglect. I think it's very, very important that from that it's done properly, because there's all sorts of repercussions if it's not done in a proper manner.
Yeah.
Sorry, Clark.
Sorry, Chair. Just for members' information, the total insurance policy for the year, which we are about to pay tomorrow, is £7,150. That covers all of the assets that are listed there. And the agreement with the insurance company confirmed at today's meeting with them, as a virtual meeting, of course, was that premium will be adjusted according to the valuations that we submit after the professionals have done their job. There is a separate policy for Salisbury Gardens as a building, which is renewed in September. But this one is renewable on the 14th of April.
Okay. And what, sorry to interrupt, what's the implication here? Are we reckoning that the buildings are undervalued or overvalued?
Undervalued.
Yeah, I thought, yeah.
Some of them are quite considerable, David. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you.
Which would suggest that a re-evaluation would push the insurance premium higher. Would suggest that, wouldn't it? But of course, but with that, we reduce the risk to the town in the event something should happen. Approximately how long ago were they valued? I mean, are we 5 years out of date? 10, 15?
Chair, if I can respond to that.
Yeah, sure. Well, I wouldn't know the answer to that.
The practice has been over the last years, as we've been taking on assets, they've been added to what was a very different policy, of course, 8 years ago. And the valuation has been suggested by our insurance broker. The exception is the valuation of Salisbury Gardens, which was carried out by a professional in order to ensure that the full replacement insured cost would be available. But we haven't had a professional valuation that we have commissioned on any of these.
To my mind, as a layman, not somebody working in the insurance sector, it does seem like a lot of money, £7,000 a year for the insurance as it stands. I mean, what kind of risk do we have with the Ventnor Park toilets and the bandstand, for example? I mean, is there a possibility a tree's going to fall on it and wipe out the building?
Yeah.
Well, that's the contingency that you're insuring against. The other side of the coin is if you don't insure, or if you under-insure, you're just not covered, especially if a member of the public gets hurt or even worse. It just isn't worth thinking about. So,
That's the name of insurance, yes.
Yeah, it's just one of these things that I think you have to grin and bear at the end of the day. What we have to decide really here is whether we instruct the surveyors to revalue the buildings professionally. And if so, do we go for the lower valuation or the higher valuation, members? I don't see that there's any. Jim or Brian, you would know, is there any difference in the reputations of the prospective bidders here, or their bona fides are probably, you're a surveyor yourself, Councillor Lucas, you probably know more about this than any of us do, or certainly more than I do.
Well, they're both professional people, and I think it's probably the lack of overheads for the cheaper one, which has made it more economic. So I think we should go for the cheaper one, 850. They're both professional people, and we as a council can rest assured that they've took professional judgment. One of the important things is a building. You look at a building and say, "Oh, you probably see that up for sale for 25,000, whatever," but it may cost 45,000 to rebuild it, because the insurance principle is for a complete rebuild, including clearing away the hardcore if it's falls over to start off with, and the VAT. So it's quite a bit different from most people's perception of the value of a property.
And recently, we had to shell out all that money for that wretched man in his wheelchair, didn't we? Let's not forget that. You know, these things happen. So Brian is right. We do have to be really careful. Make sure you're not related to any of these people, though.
I just cancel you, Councillor Julian, for that this is a public meeting, and
That's right.
Assuming wretched was in inverted commas.
Yes, of course it was. But it was a very unfortunate set of circumstances. Nothing to do with us.
Absolutely.
So we must do it. We've got to be covered.
So what we need to just to put this on the straight and narrow, Councillor Lucas or Councillor Good, is a motion for the lower to take up the lower valuation.
I'd go for that. Like I say, I know both of them really well. They're both honest people. They've got all the qualifications. Just the lower valuations got the lower overheads, really, not lower overheads.
Okay, so you're formally moving that, Councillor Toogood.
Yes, I would, Chair. Yes, thank you.
Happy to second that, Councillor Lucas?
Please to second it. Yes, thank you.
Anybody in dissent? Thank you, Clark. That's unanimous that we go for the lower valuation and go ahead with the insurance as is. Okay, on to item number 7, which is the Ventnor Park strategy. Members, I don't know if you've read the document that Nick Cox has prepared, and we have talked about this in the assets group before, and there's been a bit of toing and froing, and we've asked for members' input into this. I don't know if anybody has felt strong enough to do it. I think it's for myself quite a strong document that Nick Cox has prepared here, and I thank him for it publicly. We are asked for the recommendations that members are recommended to adopt the strategy, subject to any amendments that members might like to put forward tonight. Are there any such amendments before we open the conversation more generally? Councillor Bond.
Well, it's not. I mean, to be honest, as someone who uses the park every day, I thought the presentation and design of the document were really good. The use of photographs. It's an attractive document until you start to read it. The content I found really disappointing. I mean, I know it's a high-level strategy document, but it's very heavy going. At the beginning, you've got lots of introductory sections. You've got summary as section 1. You've got methodology as section 2. Introduction, rather bizarrely, as section 3. And then you've got overview as section 4. And if you read those sections, there's an awful lot of guff, to be honest, in those 4 sections. A lot of repetition. There isn't a very clear division of the material between those 4 sections. Something like the methodology section could go off into an appendix at the end, or even be deleted. To be honest, I don't think you'd lose anything from the document if you deleted that whole section. And it isn't until page 6 really that the reader starts to get to the meat of what we're going to do with the park, which I think does make the document very reader unfriendly. When you get to the introduction section, the sentence defining the park says, and I'll read it out, the area covered extends from the edge of Lovelace car park in the east to the field to the west of Flowers Brook. And that can't be right. The field to the west of Flowers Brook is private land. I mean, it's nothing to do with the park. And the implication of that is that Flowers Brook is included within the park, which is possible, but then right underneath there's a map, and the map is completely different. The map has Lovelace car park included, and the map has got Flowers Brook excluded. So right from the beginning, it's completely confusing what area the document covers. Then you get onto the aspirations section, which is, again, in my view, rather weak. It's got lots of procedural items in it that do need to be addressed, but they're not aspirations. There's nothing in there about how we're going to go about tackling these aspirations. I mean, personally, ideas I have, I'd like to see a park fund sort of separate from the council's funding that we could use for donations and legacies. And I think legacies could be a potentially in the longer term a very attractive source of funding. But that's, you know, that's something. And again, I'd like to see a park user group so that we actually get users involved in testing ideas for the park. Those are sorts of things that we should be aiming for. There's nothing in the document about the problems the park already has. We've got rats living in the south wall of the pond. We've got fox and badger holes in the upper part that are quite hazardous for children playing ball up there. And if I've tripped over them myself with the dog. We've got the litter bins can't cope at summer weekends. We've got the risk of a litter bin fire if people put barbecue coals in them, which they did a couple of years ago, and the fire brigade had to come out. And we've got that shelter at the top of the park, which is mainly used for a number of unpleasant uses that I won't go into during the meeting. That shelter could be something of an asset, and I would have thought it would be worth thinking about what we could use that for. And in fact, the upper park has quite a lot of potential. I mean, there are some great viewpoints in the upper park. If you're over 6 foot tall and stand right by the hedge, I would have thought we could make a lot more of that upper park. And again, that's not really mentioned in the document at all. The challenges section hasn't been thought through, I don't think. I mean, challenges are supposed to be the things, you know, the main obstacles we have to overcome. And when you look at that list of challenges, it's a real mix of stuff. I mean, item 2 and item 4 are actually aspirations. They should be in the aspirations section. Item 3 is a fact of life about the population density. It's not a challenge. I mean, we can't change the population density of the town. Number 9 about technology is a fair point, but again, it's not an aspiration. We have a budget target as a council that we agreed quite recently for £7,500 of income from the park this year. There's nothing in this document at all about how we're going to achieve that. I don't detect that the ASG has even begun to think about how we're going to balance the budget. And surely a key part of the strategy for the park has to be balancing the finances. And although the document refers to donations, we can use donations to fund improvements to the park. We can't use donations to balance the budget and fund other services. So we've got a £7,500 gap in the budget, and there's nothing in the strategy about how we're going to tackle it. Then you get to the end, you've got these 4 strategies, and again, I don't feel they've been thought through very well. You've got two separate strategies that focus on biodiversity and the natural environment. And even the document at the end says it's potentially confusing because they appear similar, which is, to me, is an admission that it's all a bit mixed up. You've got nothing there about adult recreation, and surely, you know, it's a park first and foremost. It's not a nature reserve. It's a park. Adult recreation and is part of the key object of a park. And a lot of the ideas, there's some good ideas in the photos. There's some very interesting ideas, but none of them are mentioned in the document. Well, those are the sorts of things we should be looking at that are in the photos, and that's about adult recreation first and foremost, and that's not mentioned in the strategy at the end, which is strange. The third strategy on community involvement is very important. I mean, that's why I think we need a park user group. But if you look at the items on that page, things like park design, horticultural features, efficient management, car parking. I mean, those are all important issues, but none of them are anything to do with community ownership or involvement. I mean, car parking is is something we need to attend to, but it's not about community ownership. And I just think the document is not very well organised. And then at the end, the next step section doesn't actually say anything about what the next steps will be. It meanders off into a defence of the confusion that you've got in the strategy section. So, I mean, my conclusion reading this is there's a lot of potential here, and it's a very attractive presented document, but the content is horrendous, to be honest, for a reader. It's just badly organised, badly written, way too long, and I think it needs a significant rewrite to be fit for purpose. And the other point that occurs to me, this is the last council meeting of the term. It's probably the last council meeting for many of us. We don't know how many of us. And this is the sort of document that a new council ought to be adopting and take forward over the next 4 years. It's not something that we should be agreeing as the sort of last thing that many of us do at the end of the term. So I would propose that we put this on the agenda for an early council meeting at the next term when the new councillors can get involved. And in the meantime, we try and sort out what, to be honest, is a mess of a document. I'm sorry to be negative, and there are some positive things in the document, and there are some ideas here that are worth working on, but the actual document as a strategy, I thought it's missed the target.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Bronson. We'll take that as a net minus on Nicky Cox's authorship. You sounded more like a college lecturer there than you did a councillor, I have to say. Clark, could you just remind me when this was sent to councillors in draft form?
It was sent to councillors with the papers for this meeting, which would have been on when they were delivered on Thursday.
No, I'm talking about the draft that Nicky originally sent.
As you're aware, it's been grew out of the original informal meeting of the town council back in February, and since then it's been considered by a staff meeting where it had a considerable going over, and by both the two working groups of the council. So yes, there have been opportunities to look at it and consider it, but if there are significant concerns amongst members, then leaving it to the new council clearly isn't a problem. The clerk will operate without a strategy document, and matters will proceed accordingly.
Well, a strategy document is just exactly what it says. It's a strategy document. It's not a policy document. That's the first thing to say. So this is not council policy. This is put forward as a discussion paper. And it was also put forward that the members should, in advance of this meeting, and it was very clear to me, I don't know if it was clear to Councillor Bond or others, but it was certainly clear to me that councillors were asked for their input, and not just by Nicky Cox, but by me certainly. Earlier on, so from that point of view, that's where the disappointment for me lies, rather than the authorship of the document itself.
Yeah, if you remember.
Excuse me, Councillor, but I'm not finished speaking yet. But I'm quite happy that this be remitted to a future meeting, if that's the consensus. If that's the consensus of this meeting. The management of the park is something, and the finances of the park for the next year are decided in any case, because that was we're taking it halfway through. Financial commitments were already made by Isle of Wight Council. So from that point of view, there's not a huge impact on our budget. I think the clerk would probably agree, apart from the one or two inquiries that we've had for letting the park for various projects in the summertime, and the new council will be, can quite happily, from my point of view, carry on managing it in that respect. Sorry, Ian.
Well, just on a point of information, Chair, I received an email from I think Officer, I think it was, last month, referring to this document, which we're not attaching it. I actually emailed you, Chair, directly asking for a copy of it, and I got no acknowledgement or reply from that email. So I then emailed Nick Cox and asked him for a copy of it, and he replied quite politely, but basically telling me I wasn't entitled to see it because it was for ASG members only. So I have tried to input to this before now and got nowhere. And it's the first chance I had to really read this in depth, given it is a very long, heavyweight document, was at the weekend. So I think I've tried quite hard to get involved earlier, and I haven't had the chance to do so.
Well, I apologise for that. I mean, I certainly never got an email about it, or else I would have responded to it. But I'll check my other files just to make doubly sure. But certainly from where I am at the moment, I think I would have remembered.
Well, I look forward to your apology when you find it, Chair.
I'll decide when and where I apologise to people, but I'll certainly look to see that, whether I received it or not. If I received it and ignored it, then I will apologise. But if I didn't receive it, I wouldn't apologise for something I never got sight of. But that's a different matter. Look, Clark, I think we're not going to get anywhere on this today, so I propose as chair that we remit this to a future meeting of the council, because I'm not prepared. We've got other things on the agenda tonight, and I don't think we should be prepared to go on beyond 9 o'clock. Councillor Milford.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I won't make detailed comments there, but I think there is one issue I would like the council's view on. That is, it says very clear in this document, it's always in my understanding, that we don't charge for events that are in the park. And there is one that's been publicly advertised, and in his dinosaurs, I think it is, where they're actively selling tickets now for admission to that event in the park, and it's at £15 a head, and there's obviously quite a lot for local residents to pay. And I thought our policy in managing the park was not to allow admission charges, and this is actively being marketed as we speak.
What organisation, sorry, Steve, is that?
I don't know what the organisation is, but it's been advertised on Facebook. Others may have seen it. The group is called Andy and His Dinosaurs. It's a thing that's on television, and kids can go to it. And I've seen it at other events. But it's actively marketing, and they're taking bookings and monies now at a cost of £15 a head. And I was just a bit concerned that this is going ahead when our policy is not to charge for events in the park.
Oh, I don't know anything about that. Maybe somebody else could throw some light on that, Clark.
Chair, we're very clear that we're with Councillor Milford entirely. There can't be a charge for entry to the park, because clearly it can't be closed off, and nor should it be. There is a difference, I think you'll find, with some events such as the Fringe, with whom we're in discussion at present, who will have marquees within the park for particular activities, and they will be proposing to charge for going into those. But I think Councillor Milford might agree that's a different consideration. There certainly shouldn't be a charge for entry to the park, and that would never be agreed by any of us. So,
Steve?
Well, I'd say that if the tag clerk is assuring us that it's not for an actual admission charge to the park itself, and it would be the event I'm looking at, referring to, is a marquee event. Is that what you're saying?
we've had no contact from the person you mentioned, Councillor Milford, so it's a mystery to us too.
So they're obviously, Councillor Milford, under the impression that they have a reservation. It may have been even through the Isle of Wight Council, we have to remember, and it might be a commitment that we inherit. So, but as to them charging people, I'm with you, and I'm with the clerk. I certainly don't know anything about this. I've never seen anything about it on Facebook. I don't go on Facebook that often these days, or on other social media. So, but all I can think is that we ask the clerk and the deputy clerk to have a look at this and take the necessary action. Councillor Cockett.
I'm 99% sure this is being the Andy's Dinosaur Adventure is underneath is as going on as part of the Fringe, and the Fringe have always had paid events within marquees within the putting green area.
Yeah.
Okay.
The putting green area. Yeah. Okay. Well, no doubt that. Yeah, sure. Thanks, Councillor Cockett. I think that's as much as we can say about that for the minute, Councillor Milford. We'll just make sure that, certainly for our part, you're absolutely right that that's always been our case with anti-charging members of the public for an open park space. That's for sure. Getting back to what I was saying before, Clark, I would propose, could I have a seconder, please, that this gets remitted to a future meeting?
Well, I'm happy to do that, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Bond. Anybody against? Thank you very much, Clark. Duly noted. Ventnor Haven Group. I have, I've just, before we bring anybody else into this, the background to this obviously is that I've been in discussions with officers and elected representatives from the leader and the deputy leader and others about Ventnor Haven going back probably, remind me, Clark, maybe 4 years now or longer, about the future of Ventnor Haven. We tried originally to engage Jeff Blake and Sean Strivens, and they have had separate discussions with Isle of Wight Council, which are a matter for them and the council, not a matter for us. But it got to the stage where we decided that a united approach was needed over the Haven and over the future, because there were all sorts of rumours after Ryde Harbour being sold off. Well, when I say it was going to be sold off to an independent personal body, but it's now being taken over by Ryde Town Council of their own, and with Newport Harbour having plans attached to it as well. So that really, that's the background of where we were with the Haven. And we've, myself and the Clerk and Councillor Toogood have had discussions with Councillor, sorry, not Councillor, with Mr. Blake and Mr. Strivens over the past 2 or 3 months now, which for my part have been going quite well. So it's just a matter, this is something else like the park that's a bit of an iconic thing for Ventnor, and is going to need some careful management going forward. So could I just ask you to fill in the spaces of what I've said about our meetings, and then maybe bring Jim in and then open it up to others. With regards to the group formation, please.
Chair, yes, my concern, as you know, I've shared with you for several years, and you share it, I know, that the Haven represents the most serious threat to the town's future that exists. If you were here, councillors, in 2010, when I first started, you'll know what I'm talking about. The production of hydrogen sulfide from rotting seaweed in the Haven led to cancellations by people arriving on the doorsteps of hotels. It led to people in Upper Ventnor even having to keep their windows closed all day. Those of you who did chemistry lessons like I did will know at school what hydrogen sulfide smells like, and it would be the death of any tourist town, and certainly this one, if it were to get out of control. When it happened in 2010, the Isle of Wight Council were reluctant to take on responsibility for it, and endeavoured to get the town council of that time to halve the then cost of $25,000 a year to deal with it. The town council, quite rightly in my view, refused to do that on the grounds that it was a Isle of Wight council responsibility, statutorily speaking, and they found a solution to it, which has operated now for the last 10 years. But that's now at risk because the current contract for clearing the seaweed ends on the 31st of March next year. So we're into the last year of the current arrangement. Sean Strevens, who operates the contract for clearing the seaweed, has told us repeatedly in recent times that the boat and the pump will both need replacement beyond 2022 when the contract runs out. And so the Isle of Wight Council will be looking, or somebody will be looking, at a very considerable expense next year. And my sense of the discussions I've had with the Isle of Wight Council officers and reading the papers which have gone to Cabinet is that the Isle of Wight Council are just pushing it out to sink. The sale of Ryde Harbour has left Ventnor without any attraction to any developer that anybody might consider. The paper that went to Cabinet on March the 11th talks about them having had some commercial interest, but that was only when the two harbours were linked together. and it was understandable that somebody might take on Ventnor in order to get Ryde. That's no longer a feasible way forward, and at present there is no other way forward. As I've commented in the paper, the issue of the Haven doesn't appear on the Isle of Wight Council's forward plan, which takes us to July before there is any proposed further action in connection with it. And that leaves a very short, impossibly short timescale for developing alternatives or even ensuring that the current solution continues. Councillor Toogood, the Mayor and I have shared those concerns, and again they're shared by the people we're talking to, by both Sean Strevens and Jeff Blake. And somehow we've finished up the latest meeting, informal though it was inevitably, looking for a way of endeavouring to bring pressure on the Isle of Wight Council to move towards a solution quickly. And the feeling was that if the three of us acted together, there was a better prospect of getting the publicity that this might need, and certainly the engagement of the Isle of Wight Council, which it absolutely needs, than if it continues at present, where an officer talks to Sean Strevens about the contract, another officer talks to Jeff Blake about the lease, and the Isle of Wight Council don't talk to us at all.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the reasoning that lies behind the development of this loose but effective, I think, formal agreement to act as a group in progressing something positive by way of action that will deal with the issue. Thank you, Chair. Councillor Toogood may want to add to that.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, David, you said practically everything, but I think it's a case of call my bluff, really. Sean Strevens and Jeff Blake made it quite clear they can't survive at this harbour. The Isle of Wight County Council is a legal commitment. The trouble we've got with the Isle of Wight Council, they're pushing around their offices so much, push it to the 11th hour, and we're stuck with something in Ventnor, which is going to kill Ventnor. But I think personally, everyone's got to put their hands in their pocket, because in business, long term, this will put great value to the Blakes and the Strevens' business to own a harbour, own part of the harbour. So somehow it's got to come together, and everyone, all I can see, everyone's got to put their hands in their pocket. But the biggest problem is the Isle of Wight County Council, because they move so slowly, don't they? That is what I can see the problem. And quite frankly, do they care about it? I don't know, but they have a legal obligation to. They might think they can get out of it, David, but I don't think they can.
Yeah, sorry, thanks, Councillor Toogood. In relation to that, in my meetings with Dave Stewart as leader and Stuart Hutchison as deputy leader, Stuart is not standing again at the current the next election, so he won't be in post. But I know there was a view, and certainly in county council circles at the time, that they really wanted short of Ventnor Haven, and if that involved filling it and then turning it into an extension of the Eastern Esplanade car park, then they would have been quite happy to do that. But as the clerk has quite sensibly said earlier, you know, our problem is that we have to look after the health and well-being of our community, and we've all lived through the horrendous, the disgusting smells that have emanated from that part of the sea over God knows how many years. I mean, I'm lucky enough to have a house that overlooks the sea, but unfortunately, when these things happen, you can't have any windows or anything open, even in the height of the summer. So, you know, something really is having to be done, and this is the time when really decisions need to be made, because we or the next council will find themselves in a position of having to make very, very serious decisions. And I think, from speaking, I won't be speaking for the council very much longer, but I really think that Ventnor Town Council needs to have a controlling interest in Ventnor Haven, no matter what happens going forward. Thank you. Anybody else? Councillor Milford and then Councillor Lucas.
Thank you, Chair. I understand the frustration, the behind all this and where the fault lies, and I fully support this type of agreement to sort of take us forward. And the only slight amendment I would like to put forward is under 2C, and it's nothing personal against you, Jim, at all, but I think the position should be an elected councillor should be in attendance, or a position, a portfolio holder or something like that, rather than a named individual. So under 2C, I will put an elected councillor representative rather than a named individual.
Thank you, Councillor Milford. I don't see any reasonable opposition to that. Councillor Lucas.
Well, I mean, we know the Isle of Wight Council will be very keen to get a shot of this liability, but we can't let them walk away without any expenditure. And that would leave this team of 3 people to be paying for getting rid of this seaweed. Now, what concerns me is that that would leave this council with a fairly large third to pay. And what concerns me also is the fact that both Blake and Strevens don't seem to have any commercial ideas about how they will extend the use of that in order to, obviate some of the payments that will involve. I mean, if they're happy to pay, 33,000 a year just to be part of the fishing there, or to park their new boats, that's fair enough. But it gives us a long-term liability, even if we have a controlling interest. And we've got to be very careful whether we saddle the residents of Ventnor with that sort of money on a long-term basis. It's a big sum of money, and it can only increase in terms of inflation. So I'm very concerned. I mean, I don't always agree with Nick, but I see Nick's negative summary of this whole situation, really. And I feel that going into this, it might sound a very pally thing to do, but I see a very dangerous precedent being set to join up with 2 commercial organisations, even if we have the 2 controlling interest. We've got to guard against them failing or retiring, etc. And where will we be as a council? So it needs a very clever bit of legal framework in order to protect us if we're going to join in this council and take the responsibility away from the Isle of Wight Council.
Thank you, Councillor Lucas. Anybody else?
Just if I may, to respond to Councillor Lucas, I fully understand those concerns, and I agree with Nick that we ought to have nothing to do with it in a very real sense. But I don't think we can ignore it at this stage. And to reassure members, there has been no discussion as yet about any of the 3 potential partners to this agreement taking on the financial cost of it. That responsibility still sits with the Isle of Wight Council. The purpose of this group at this stage is to work with the council to enable it to fulfil its duties and to explore other options, because Jeff and Sean do have ideas for alternative methods of dealing with the seaweed, and nobody's listening to them at County Hall at present. So there's no commitment in this agreement, certainly as far as I'm concerned, or in the writing of it, about any financial commitment at this stage from anybody. And that includes both Sean and Jeff. When Councillor Toogood talks about putting hands in pockets, they've shown no signs yet of doing very much about that. They have talked about making some contribution, but we're a long way off where that might need to be. And that isn't our responsibility at this stage. It sits with the Isle of Wight Council, but they are doing nothing, and in my view, will do nothing unless they are pushed into it. And this group is the most effective mechanism we've been able to come up with that might have that kind of ability to take action
you, Clark. Yeah, the only thing I would add to that during the meetings that we have had recently, certainly, I mean, Jeff Blake, who could talk for England, really, I think would agree. He does have some ideas about moving forward, about investments and about ways of making money in his particular area of expertise. He did mention, for example, and I don't think this is talking out of turn, that you know there will come a time when he won't be servicing loans which he required to take out historically, and therefore money will become available for doing other things. Now that's a matter for him to take up with people in the future. But just to put it in perspective, that I think they are thinking seriously about investment. But as the Clerk has just said, you know, there is no way that we are committed to anything financially at the moment at all. This is just merely a talking vehicle to try and, if you like, it's a crude phrase, but to try and goad Isle of Wight Council into doing something proactive rather than sitting on their hands as they have been doing for years and years and years heretofore. Anybody else?
Just ask a question, Chair.
Sure.
Do we have anything from either the councillors or the Isle of Wight Council itself as to why they unbundled Ryde and Ventnor? Because if the Isle of Wight Council is sitting there seeing this as a potential problem, I would have thought that strategy was attractive to it, and the fact that it's changed that strategy is a bit odd.
I think the direct answer to that, Councillor Bond, and I'm speaking from my recollection here, I think the original strategy from as far as the Isle of Wight Council was to sell off Ryde to a commercial enterprise. We're talking to a dredging company, for example, and a shipping company, and then Ventnor would have been thrown into the mix, if you like. But obviously, Ventnor Town Council, strike that, Freudian slip. Ryde Town Council are not interested in taking over Ventnor Haven, so therefore the agreement that they have with Ryde Town Council, which we're obviously not privy to, would preclude any like involvement in Ventnor Haven. That's my reading of it. If I had gone to a commercial enterprise, then sure, then that probably would have happened. But because Ryde Town Council taking over Ryde are not interested in running anything in Ventnor, just as we wouldn't be interested in running anything in Ryde.
No, I mean, that's fair enough, but it seems very short-sighted by Isle of Wight Council because, I mean, it's the sort of issue that if it, depending on how it plays out, you could see it getting national media coverage and becoming a real embarrassment for the island. And the Isle of Wight Council is being a little bit naive if it thinks it can just duck out of all of that.
Well, I think they have done, and I think the deal's been done. And as far as I'm aware, I think, and Ryde Town Council, for their part, provided a business plan which was accepted by the Isle of Wight Council, and the deal, the Clerk might be able to put more flesh on that bone, but I think the deal has been done, and that Ryde will be taking it over.
I can confirm that's the case, Chair. The Cabinet decision is that they will now only deal with Ryde Town Council and on the basis of that business plan. So unless the plan falls apart for any reason, that's what will happen. I think Ryde Town Council are being very brave, but the consequences for Ventnor are quite severe.
We were cut adrift, in other words. Okay, well, can I propose that we, with the amended wording as Councillor Milford has said regarding 2C. Jim, did you want to talk about that? Are you happy with that? Well, you're muted, Jim.
No, I'm sorry. I'm happy with what's been said. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so with the amendment, Clerk, that also in attendance will be the Town Clerk and an elected councillor. Okay. Could I have a seconder, please?
I'll second that, Stuart. Sorry.
No, it's okay.
Yeah, sorry.
Definitely.
Who proposed it?
I propose it, Clerk.
Thank you. Okay.
That's an order, I take it. Well, I'll have to be, because I said it was. Anybody against?
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Right, let's move to my agenda. Sorry, my paper's mixed up a little bit. Meetings after the 7th of May. This is a matter for you, Clark.
Thank you, Chair. I won't read you the paper because I hope you have at least skipped through it.
I have it with my sweaty palm.
The issue is that current regulations under which virtual meetings have taken place in councils all over the country came into force in April last year, but run out on the 7th of May. And so far, the government has refused, for reasons that baffle most people in my kind of role, have refused to extend it. So there is a view that after the 7th of May, town and parish councils and principal authorities should meet face to face. I've indicated in section 2 of the report that there is a considerable discussion about that going on, because it's really has caused a lot of worry to a lot of people who just think it's silly, given the success with which councils by and large have adjusted to the new medium for holding meetings. I think most of us would agree it's not as good as meeting face to face, but it works. Business gets done, decisions get made, and nobody catches COVID as a consequence of meeting closely together. At least we hope not. So the decision not to extend the regulations has been challenged in the High Court under judicial review by Hertfordshire County Council. And that's been supported by both the National Association of Local Councils and the Society of Local Council Clerks. The development since I wrote the paper is that a court date has now been set for that hearing of the 21st of April. So there will be a decision by then. Meanwhile, the debate goes on, and I've been, as the section 2 indicates, involved with the forum in the Society of Local Council Clerks website, where some of the leading thinkers on the subject in that forum have suggested that, as there is no specific prescription against holding virtual meetings in the 1972 Local Government Act, which is the relevant legislation for these meetings, it isn't necessarily illegal to continue to hold them just because there is no specific permission from the government to do so. So that's something that some councils are now considering, and to my knowledge, some of them at least have decided to go down that route. And the risk that they feel they're taking in doing that is that the meeting might be held to be unlawful, in which case the decisions will be invalid. However, the only mechanism for demonstrating them to be unlawful is through a judicial review taken by a member of the public or somebody else. So presumably people will wait in the end until the hearing on the 21st of April before taking any final decisions. But it seemed to me sensible to ask you for your views at this time, because it will affect the annual town council meeting, the annual parish meeting, and the initial meeting of the new town council on the 17th of March, as to whether that should be face to face in which case, given the current government regulations on social distancing staying in place, the green room is not a venue that would be usable. Alison, do you want to talk a bit about your looking at alternative venues in case we need to find them?
Yeah, I've been in touch with Upper Ventnor Community Association this morning and also St Lawrence Village Hall. But the procedure is at the moment that only 6 people are allowed in village halls up to the 17th May when rules change. But then after the 21st of June, obviously, pretty much we're hoping everything's going to open up and rules will be very much looser then. So we're going to struggle, I think, to find a venue to actually hold a town council meeting or planning meeting or where we can securely social distance, and obviously to allow the members of the public in as well. Like I say, village halls, it won't apply to village halls. I've left a voicemail for St Francis School to come back to me, and I've sent an email to St Catherine's College, which is the old free school up on Leeson Road there, because we've used the hall there before. So there are inquiries out, but I think we are going to struggle to find an alternative venue.
Over to you, Chair.
Yeah, it's a very, it's a hard quandary, and I think it's just shows you really a little bit of the mess the government's got itself into this. It's not, and how is this replicated throughout the country? Hundreds and thousands of parish and town councils must be having the same problems. It's going to be interesting to see how they. For myself, you'll all know that I, successfully or otherwise, chaired meetings while I was away in Thailand, although the time difference was something virtually. And we all had our meetings. We were all meeting here again tonight. I don't see what the problem with virtual meetings. In fact, I think that outside of the public hemisphere or the public sphere, that these are things that are going to happen more and more with people working from home and things like that. And I think a lot of people will grasp that with both hands. So, from my point of view, I have to admit, as I'll talk about soon, it's not going to affect me, but it's not. It's something that the biggest problem for us, I think, is town meetings and annual meetings where we've generally had about in excess of 100 people. We didn't have one last year just for this very reason. So that is going to be a big problem as far as I'm concerned. And it'll be interesting to see how the judicial review goes on April the 21st. I actually think they've got a very good chance of success, purely because it's not actually there in the text of the Act, the 1972 Act. So I think that they've got a very good chance of that, the government being defeated over that. That's really all I can add to it. Anybody else?
Chair, if you look at the news tonight, the amount of people in the high street was phenomenal. No social distance, very few masks. My personal opinion, I think we could probably get a third bout of this, and we should hang on probably to at least towards the end of the year before we make any more decisions. No one abided by the rules in town. It's just packed on telly tonight. No masks, no social distance, all clambering around. I think there's more to come, personally.
Well, we can't. Yeah, I take your point. The council too good, but as a town council, we can't go down that route. We've got to abide by the rules and the laws as they stand at the time. So we're. Yeah. So, Councillor Lucas. You're muted, Brian. You're muted.
Yeah, I agree with Councillor Toogood. I feel we should keep this online forum going. One of the beauties of the town meeting is you get a whole lot of people together who have got an opportunity of saying what they feel about certain initiatives that we have on the council. Now, David has got this forum going where basically I think that replaces that. Everybody who's vaguely interested in the council has an opportunity to see what we're doing and to feedback comments to us. So I think the town meeting has been satisfied by that process. So therefore, if we meet as a council online as we are tonight, I would be quite happy and I would feel much safer. I agree that there are lots of people who's waiting to see the 12th of April and they're just throwing caution to the wind and they're not taking the sort of care that they should do. So I would vote to carry on meeting online. I suffer it, but it's effective.
Thank you, Councillor Lucas. Anybody else like to say anything? Councillor Crockett.
Yeah, Chair. I mean, I think as the clerk has pointed out, that decision is not really with us. It's going to be made on the 21st of April. So as it stands, we have our hands tied, waiting for that event, do we not? So if we cannot meet in a village, and I'm sure that these problems are obviously up and down the country. So if we can't meet in a village hall for our next meetings, could we even meet in at St. Francis or St. Catherine's? Are they not bound by the 6-person rule? I mean, what? Yeah, Alison, please.
Yeah, Stephen, I've got messages out with both of those right now, so I'm waiting to hear back from them. I would think, difficult to say, of course, but because schools have gone back, I would have thought that both of those opportunities would be available to us. But like I say, I'm waiting to hear back on both of those, but certainly village halls are a no-go.
I think, Alison, there'll be distinction drawn here. As you rightly say, the schools can go back, but whether they could, the school facilities can be used in that particular purpose, I would doubt very much. The only thing I would say was that if the judicial review goes the council's way, not our council, but the council who are bringing the case on April the 21st, then it will be for you as a council down the line to decide if and when you're going to either remain virtual or go personal. It'll be an entirely a matter for whichever council is in place at the time to decide for themselves. You'll be in control of your own destiny. Whereas if the High Court says actually the government's right, then the axe falls, doesn't it? So from that point of view. So really we're looking to see whether the next two meetings on the 17th of May and the 10th of June shall remain virtual until we see how things progress. So can I have a proposal for that, please?
So the proposal is what exactly? I mean, to my mind, if we have the option to remain virtual, we might not even have the option, but if we do have the option to remain virtual for the 17th of May and the 10th of June, then I would propose that we remain virtual for those. But after that, I think this discussion needs to be had again. But certainly another 2 months won't do any harm. So if that is the proposal, then I would propose that.
Could I have a seconder for that? Councillor Chukwud. Anybody?
I need to
Sorry,
hear
Clark.
I didn't catch the proposal, Chair. And before you tell, Councillor Crockett has said we don't have an option. I just want to say that I think we do. That if members don't feel comfortable with having a face-to-face meeting, and if we can't find a venue to accommodate a socially distanced one, I think we have the option of holding it anyway virtually, because there is, as I said earlier, no specific statement that it is illegal to do so.
Yeah, I think to an answer to that, Clark, and response to what Councillor Coggins says, I think you've got too many logistical hurdles to overcome if you're going to have a face-to-face meeting, as it were. It makes it sound as if it's going to be a one-on-one meeting, but you're talking about a meeting that councillors are physically in the same room as members of the public. I just don't think it's going to be possible in the time that you've got to organise it. Councillor Logan.
Yeah, I mean, just to go back to what Councillor Cockett was saying, I don't think we're disputing that the virtual thing. Just that it was just be a proposal for the next 2 meetings.
Yeah.
I think that has to be. I think that was what he's trying to make clear. Then the situation will have developed one way or other, and we would need to revisit it after the meeting in June, or at the meeting in June, probably.
Yeah.
And
Thanks.
I think that's the proposal.
Yeah. To be clear for the record, the proposal, which has already been proposed by Councillor Toogood, is that the meetings of the 17th of May and the 10th of June remain virtual, and then it's for the future council to make a decision in the light of whatever court case decision comes in the meantime. So we have a proposal. Could I have a seconder, please? Councillor Logan, anybody against? Okay, Clark.
You?
Your next 2 meetings will be virtual. And the annual parish meeting.
Shall I say something about this, Chair? I know
Yeah, please.
we are required to have one. There's no reason why it shouldn't be virtual or face to face, depending on what members feel. And the main purpose of it in the last 2 or 3 years has been giving local groups the opportunity to share what they've done and what they're up to. Although normally the mayor has summarised the previous year's work of the council, but it's not been mainly about the town council, it's been mainly about the community, which is what I think is appropriate in a place where there is a town council for those decisions. And the purpose of the annual town meeting is more about the community speaking to you rather than you speaking to them. And I'm happy to be corrected because you can do what you want, really.
Well, it'll be for the new chair to decide that. But yeah, I agree with what you said. It has historically been like that. So in fact, the annual parish meeting will be. It's been considered for Monday the 24th of May at 6 p.m. in any case. So really, you have to decide, or we have to decide here, as whether that's going to be a virtual meeting. A, whether it's going to go ahead, and B, whether it's going to be virtual or physical. I think, am I correct, Clark, that it has to go ahead legally?
It is a statutory requirement.
Yeah, sorry. So that misspoke there then. So we don't have to decide whether it goes ahead because that decision has already been taken for us. So the meeting will go ahead. The decision to be made is whether that is a virtual meeting or a physical meeting. Any comments? Councillor Pocket.
In light of the last decision, I think we're on track for a virtual meeting, aren't we? And then I recently, just anecdotally, I've recently attended a couple of excellent presentations with 150, 200 attendees that have, that have been a huge success. So if Morgan is happy that GoToMeeting can take that kind of capacity, there's no reason why we couldn't have events in similar nature to what we have had before in person. And maybe we would even reach a greater audience.
Yeah. Good point, Steve. Yeah. Anybody else? No? Okay. So I take it we're all in favour. Sorry, we'll be formal about it, shall we? Shall we have a proposal that the meeting on the 24th of May virtual? Councillor Pocket, seconder. Councillor Milford, anybody against? That's unanimous, Clark. The meeting on the 24th of May will take place at 6 p.m. and will be virtual. Post-election arrangements.
I just thought it might be useful, Chair, to put on paper what the arrangements that I think are appropriate for following the meeting. So there's nothing new there. That's what we've done in past post-election times. As you know, following the elections, this council doesn't actually retire until Monday after the elections, which is the 6th of May. And the new council takes office on the same day. So I'm proposing, as we have done before, that there be an informal meeting of the new council in advance of the annual council meeting of the council, to take place on the Wednesday of the week before the 17th of May, to deal with to have a discussion about the usual appointment, mayor, deputy mayor, planning committees and working groups. That will be Wednesday, 12th of May. Judging by where we're going, well, virtually, and I will make the usual arrangements for induction time with new members, as in members who haven't been on the town council before. Councillor Councillor Bond has suggested today that we get a copies of NALC's Good Councillor Guide, which I think is a good idea. So we'll take that forward. It's only a limited cost within my powers to execute. So we'll see that new members particularly can be as well prepared as possible for the initial formal meetings on the 17th. I think that's all from me, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. Anybody else? Okay, obviously you'll know, or if you don't know, I don't know where you've been, but I'm not standing this year, so I will, as well as not being mayor for the ensuing year, will not be a councillor for Ventnor, which for reasons which I'm not going to go into in the public domain. I've already spoken to the clerk about it, so but most of you who know me will know what my plans are in any case. And I just didn't think it fair that I would put myself forward if I wasn't able to dedicate myself to at least a substantial time with the council to take our work forward. So I decided that I wouldn't put myself forward. And I can hear some resounding cheers in the background. But I just wanted to clarify, because understanding orders, I do take the chair at the meeting to elect a new chair and vice chair of the council, David. So I'm talking about the meetings and the lead up to that, what my standing would be, because I wouldn't be an elected councillor, although I will be at the 17th of May meeting to elect a new chair, because I will be in the chair until the new chair is put in place, and then of course I'll be gone.
Yes, Chair. And as a non-elected member, you won't have a vote at the annual meeting.
No.
Other than casting vote.
I know it's ironic, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah.
Just one of these grey areas. I just wanted it to be clear to everybody that that's what the protocol was, because in the past we've usually had the new mayor and the old mayor have been part of the same council in any case. So I think we can take that as read, David, can't we then? The post-election arrangements, pretty much.
Yeah.
Okay. And I'll just say, just take this opportunity to thank you all for your forbearance while I've been chairing your meetings, and I really will. I'll say a bit more along the line, but I really will miss being with you all, and I'll miss Ventnor, but I'm not going to prolong the agony by saying any more about it. Town Clerk's report.
Briefly, Chair, because there's nothing that I think the members aren't aware of, but the support system that Alison and Tony particularly have been leading is on a low level of activity at present and reducing, and increasingly the emphasis is on encouraging people to take their own arrangements where possible. I'm pleased to tell you that the £5,000 that we successfully applied for to the Connect for Communities Fund is being well used. We're halfway through it already, and thanks to Alison for highly skilled administration, and to Tony for very effective relationships with the food bank and baby box. Opening up, we have, as you know, opened the outdoor gym and the Ventnor Park toilet. We haven't opened the paddling pool because although government guidance allows outdoor pools to be open at present, the caveat is if those who manage it believe it is safe to do so. And given the congregation, not so much of children, but of parents, last year, we are still reluctant to open it, although we are planning to do so at some point after June the 12th, when allegedly the current roadmap comes to an end and all restrictions are lifted. So the pool is being prepared. We're still waiting for some of the paint to find its way through the supply chain, but it will be ready right by that time. So it should be subject to further concerns about COVID, available at least for the school holiday period of the season. The office is still closed, apart from staff visiting it from time to time, and everything is being managed from staff homes, for the office staff, that is. Obviously, the frontline staff are working as usual. The new kitchen has been installed at the community use porter cabin, thanks to Councillor Toogood for a lot of work behind that. Where am I up to? Oh yes, I attended the latest of Bob Seeley's meetings with town and parish council reps. They're held every fortnight. They're quite useful by way of keeping up to date with what's going on in his world and other town and parish councils. Tony has held the latest meeting of the South White Parishes Health and Wellbeing Forum, which continues to be very successful, and the working groups have met as usual. Thank you, Chair. Done.
Thank you, Clark. And that's it, I think, for this particular council for 20. We have a couple of group meetings in the meantime. The elections are going to be on May the 6th. Thank you. Sorry.
Just, before you close the meeting, could I and perhaps anybody else who wants to express gratitude to those members who won't be returning. It's been an interesting experience working with all of you. I wouldn't have missed it for the world. I'm sorry you're not all coming back, but thanks very much for the work that's been done and the patience that's been shown, the information and expertise that's been committed. I'm very grateful for that, and look forward to what comes next.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you, David. Very interesting times ahead. And well, I wasn't, but as you said that, I'd just like to thank you, Alison, and all of the staff for the support that you've given me as mayor over my periods in office, without which I really couldn't have done it. And I mean that very sincerely. I think here in Ventnor, we are very lucky to have David leading this fantastic and dedicated and professional team, and I really do, for myself, and I'm sure for most of you, feel that we do have the best of the best here in Ventnor, and I know other councils, other councillors and other council officers share that view of Ventnor. So thank you all. I'll miss you all, but I'm not going to say any more than that, just in case. Thank you very much indeed, and au revoir, as we say.
Thank you.
Thank you.